Psychologica is an integrated approach to development, with survey tools and practitioner materials to help improve effectiveness of individuals, teams, and whole organizations. This video explains how to interpret and feed back 360-degree analysis reports to your clients. 360-degree analysis is a method for appraising an individual's competence or effectiveness in a number of areas, looking at their own self-perceptions and comparing these to those of other individuals, such as a boss, if we're looking at an organization, colleagues, people that report to that individual, and others who may be friends, family, customers, or anyone with a relevant view. This creates a whole 360-degree view around this individual from both the inside and the outside. 360-degree analysis is a challenging process, and projects and feedback should be treated with sensitivity. We suggest that you read the best practice advice available from the product pages of the main Psychologica website. So go to Developmental Surveys, check Perspectives 360-degree analysis, and you'll find a link to a best practice document which gives information from the point of view of the target, someone that's making an assessment, someone that's feeding back, but also setting up and managing a 360 project, and if you need to customize a survey, there's some advice there also. If you're already logged onto the practitioner pages, you can find the best practice link through the links icon and clicking on 360 best practice in the drop-down menu. In this video, we discuss interpreting and feeding back output reports from the Psychologica 360 Perspectives range. On the inside page, we see a brief introduction and a list of the assessors who have responded to the online survey. These include the focus of the 360, who is referred to throughout as self. We also see the boss, to whom this individual reports. We see colleagues at the same level who are referred to as peers. We see individuals who report to the target, members of staff, and any others who are specified as assessors. Here we should review the response rates relative to the amount of people who are nominated and discuss the significance of any omissions. When numbers in a sensitive category, such as reports, fall below 2 or 3, these are collapsed into the next level to maintain anonymity as much as possible. Here we see reports have been included in the next level, peers, for this reason. Where this occurs, an explanation is provided. Page 3 shows a typical chart illustrating how scores are presented as an average of self-scores compared to others, in this case all other assessor groups, on a scale of 1 to 10. We can also see the average or mean score as a number, and also the range of scores which contribute towards that average. We can also see how survey scores are converted into report outcomes. The online survey assesses effectiveness on a scale of 1 to 7, ineffectiveness through to highly effective. In the raw score version of the report, this is shown on a scale of 1 to 10, and this table explains what report scores actually mean from the assessor's perspective. A standardized or normed score version of the report is also available, and this is indicated on the report cover by the term STEN, which means standard score on a scale of 10. This shows scores in relation to the averages of a comparison group. In a STEN score report, page 3 will indicate the comparison group used. In this case, the tick is highlighted for leaders in the particular sector chosen, meaning all scores within the report will be averaged against this comparison group. Okay, let's look at this in a bit more detail to help you understand the choice between a raw or a STEN score option. So we have a survey scale of 1 to 7, showing levels of effectiveness. This is converted to a scale of 1 to 10 in the raw score version. However, for some comparison groups, such as leaders, they may only have a range of about 3.5 to 10, in that most of them do show strengths in a certain area, and it's unlikely that they will find themselves in a leadership position if development was needed or they were truly ineffective. So the range for leaders then is on a scale of 1 to 10, from adequate through to highly effective. We expect that most leaders will have strengths in a particular area, and this is shown as being 5.5 on this new scale, this normed scale, rather than 7, which is the equivalent score on a raw score scale. So we expect leaders to be strong in certain areas, and they only stand out as appearing above the average where they show more than that, where they show real strength and competence or real highly effective levels of ability in a certain area. So it's important to decide whether a raw score or a STEM score will be used according to the group of people that you're working with. The following pages 4 and 5 explain the background of the Psychologica model in fairly simple terms that should be understandable to your client. It's preferable that you will have looked at the video, explain the model in a bit more detail, and you can summarize this for them. The important thing here is that the colours have some meaning throughout the report and relate to specific areas of competence. On page 5 you'll also see an insert to explain any derived score that might be used in the report. This is where scores from the survey have been presented in a slightly different way, have been amalgamated to provide some sort of concept beyond the pure scores achieved in terms of competencies. If you look at the product pages on the website, they'll explain different derived scores which are in different products and where these can be used in order to develop your client. So on page 6 we see scores for personal qualities, and here we can see page 6 from a raw score version on the left and from a STEM score version on the right. On the right hand side in the STEM score version we can see that, well, actually within that comparison group leaders tend to score highly, and in fact these scores are fairly average for that sector. So the profile is very similar, but it's a little bit more depressed. It doesn't look quite so spectacular. So pause for a moment and think, where or when would you use raw scores in your feedback, and where or when would you use the STEM score versions? Bearing in mind you can download either or both from the Psychologica project management platform. Okay, well, generally speaking, you'd use raw scores where performance is being viewed in isolation, where no comparisons with others are needed, or where the target, the person you're feeding back to, may require supportive feedback to increase their confidence for some reason, or perhaps where there's little comparison data available in any case, so a comparison score wouldn't actually be meaningful. Now you'd use STEM scores where performance needs to be related to comparative expectations. So possibly the target requires some challenge, some kind of reality check regarding an overinflated sense of their achievements, or possibly where they have undermining self-perceptions, or where there's sufficient comparison data to make this meaningful. Okay, personal qualities underpin the main areas of the model as drivers of behaviour. These are shown as seen by others and don't include self-scores. We're comparing two individuals here. Some time should be spent exploring these and understanding how they may set the context for behaviour and why such perceptions should occur. The personal qualities can reveal what's really important to the individual and indicate why they may behave in certain ways. For example, we may have considerable abilities in potential, but not actively demonstrate these if our motivation levels are low. So let's explore these profiles in a bit more detail. Each component area is significant in itself, and a more detailed description of each aspect can be found in the breakdown later in the report. However, as with all profiles, a deeper insight can be gained by looking at linkages between elements. How do they fit together, particularly the higher and the lower scores? Example 1 can be seen as showing values at the level expected from the comparison group. However, his forward vision and general motivation particularly success focus, is relatively low. This suggests he may generally be trying to do the right thing, and this may sometimes be at the expense of his own personal success or career development. This theory would need to be explored with him. Example 2 is in a similar role within the same organisation, but her profile is quite different. Her personal values are at a similar level, again slightly above the average for the comparison group. However, her general motivation and sense of direction are much higher. She is clearly driven to achieve and succeed, and shows a strong sense of self-efficacy or personal confidence. She is likely to appear more dynamic and ambitious than example 1. Both these have senior positions in the health and care sector, and the relationship between values and personal success is significant in such roles. You would expect values to exceed the drive for personal success in caring professions. These certainly do in example 1, but less so in example 2, though not to an extent that would cause concern. In some other sectors, such as finance, it would not necessarily be surprising for the drive for success to be greater than the concern for values and ethics, but where this is the case, it should be explored how this may manifest in workplace behaviours. The facing page shows overall scores for the main dimensions of the model. This provides a broad overview for the individual's performance, still as seen by others. These can be considered in terms of task skills, thinking, organisational skills and tangible actions, or people skills, adaptation, social and communication skills. Further down the page we can see how the overall scores are broken down into the skill areas from which they've been derived. At this stage we're still building the big picture with our client before confirming specifics from within the main body of the report, which will look at the self versus assessor scores in the specific skill areas. The main point here is to identify the profile and to recognise the areas of strength and the specific areas of development need, and confirming that these make sense to the client. Okay, let's compare and contrast two examples from two individuals looking at the overall skill areas. Both of these are male finance directors of two different organisations but in very similar roles. Both are STEM profiles and we can see that they're quite different. So consider for a moment, what are the key features for each? How might they come across in comparison to one another? If you were feeding back these reports, would you use raw or STEM data? So, pause the video for a moment and consider these questions. Okay, I hope you've formed an idea in your mind of what these individuals may be like. Both have high levels of professional expertise and qualifications, and have a focus on quality in their work. However, example 1 is considered to be more intellectual and decisive, with more grip on output and process. He is generally more resilient and likely to catalyse change. He is considerably more influential, but is people-focused and works well with others, freely expressing his views and developing good rapport. Example 2, on the other hand, is generally more withdrawn and not necessarily coping that well. For this reason, I'd use raw scores initially with him in order to help build his confidence a little until I'm clearer regarding how he is in himself. Example 1 comes across as robust and as a star performer, and I'd use a STEM report to illustrate this, but explore some areas which are relatively lower, such as his care and empathy towards others. The main body of the report and most subsequent pages break down each skill area into its component parts. So here we're looking at problem solving and decision making. At the top of the page you can see the average for this whole area, and we can see scores from the target themselves and the average of the scores from others. And again we have this as a number and we show the range of scores here. Further down the page, we can see each component part of the skill area, and we can see how the individual score compares to a breakdown of the other assessors. So here we're looking at boss, peer, report, and others who can be customers, clients, friends, and possibly even family. So the interesting thing here is to look at the range and to see where we may be getting consistently low scores or consistently high scores, and asking questions about how and why the boss may have a different view of this individual than the people that report to them, for example. So how does this individual's behaviour change when he's dealing with others, with customers or clients, for example, compared to where he's dealing with the staff that report to him or her? And over time, as we go through the report and look at each page, we can see whether patterns are emerging in terms of how each assessor group is responding to this individual. And for each of the skill area components, we'll see a definition. So let's look at a page in a little more detail. Here we're looking at a component of adaptation, how this individual copes with stress. And we can see that this individual themselves don't consider themselves as coping that well with stress, and unfortunately others share this view. So this is a very sensitive area, and in terms of making a decision on how and the style that you use in terms of feeding back a report, whether you'd use raw or STEM scores, I would always look at the stress factor as being one which determines the resilience level of your client and how they're likely to react to what can be very challenging feedback. So again, pause the video for a moment and consider these questions. How might this individual come across based on this profile? What does it say at their likely prospects? This individual is actually working at board level. So how might that affect performance? And again, consider what sort of profile would you use, STEM or raw, in the feedback, and why. Okay, so we can see that this individual doesn't cope with uncertainty very well. He doesn't think that he does, and others would agree with that. However, despite that, he appears to remain calm. He feels that he's able to be in control and maintain a calmness during emergencies and challenging situations. And his peers and reports agree with that. And in fact, his peers see him as being slightly more than average in terms of his ability to stay calm. However, despite that calm exterior, he may be paddling below water quite a considerable rate. You can see that he feels that he's not dealing with stress very well at all. However, others aren't necessarily picking this up and are thinking he's doing better than he really is. So this indicates a little bit of a danger here, in that there's a problem going on and people aren't really aware of it. His resilience is also below average, although again reports aren't seeing that, so he's hiding that from people and struggling on. A significant factor here is that his boss hasn't responded at all, and there is a question with regard to this individual, for example, as to why that might be, how he is coping at board level, whether his days may in fact be numbered, whether some of his stress may relate to that uncertainty within the workplace, and also questions in terms of his stress management level, whether he's coping or not. Is he actually in the right role? Is he up to it? So I would use raw scores initially with regard to this in order to try and build his confidence a little, but once I get an idea of what his context really is and discuss with him what his future may be, I may share the STEM scores with him to show that he is actually relatively struggling in this role and it might not be the right one for him. Okay, let's look at another example. This individual is quite different. She sees herself as a people person. She works in media. She regards herself as being highly empathic, very supportive of others, very friendly, very customer focused. Indeed, others see her as quite strong on these features, and others in this instance did include clients. So how might she come across to others? What's this profile saying about her? How would you feed this back? Okay, clearly there's a big reality gap between what she feels her characteristics are and how others see her. Clearly she makes an effort and presents a particular face and a particular appearance to clients, but quite a different one to reports. She thinks she's empathic, but reports really don't feel that she is. So there's going to be a question here about a reality check, about understanding the impact that she may be having on others, understanding the kind of behaviours that she may be demonstrating towards clients that she's failing to demonstrate with regard to reports. So does she really support them, or no, she doesn't? She thinks that she does, but there's something here to explore around what her behaviours actually are in the workplace, because clearly her reports do not feel supported by her, and this is likely to be having an impact on their effectiveness. Following the skill areas are a number of tables showing scores at the item level. Initially, these are other scores regarding your strengths or your development needs, and these show your top 10 or your bottom 10 items from across all the different skill areas according to how others see you. So the important thing here is to see the average score and the range. So although these are development needs, sometimes the average score is actually fairly high, or sometimes the range, although low on some assessors' perceptions, are actually quite high on others. So in terms of feeding these back, you need to put them into perspective in terms of what they really mean as averages. And also ask questions why some people should rate you much more highly than others on these particular behaviours and abilities. So the other table is self versus other scores, and these look at both your hidden strengths and your blind spots. So for example, blind spots are where the self scores themselves quite highly on a certain area, whereas others don't see them as being as capable as they think they are. So this can be very challenging behaviour, and again we need to look at the level of scores that others have given. In some cases these aren't so low, but in some instances, with regard to this individual, is approachable and receptive to the views and suggestions of others. This individual thinks that they are very strong on that, whereas others really think they're not. And in fact, that particular score indicates that this particular individual will find it very hard to take the feedback report within the 360. Depending on the product you've chosen, the report may contain some derived scores. So these will be shown as a visual graphic with supporting information. So Leadership Plus contains an output looking at your interpersonal style and your levels of assertiveness and flexibility. Engaging with others looks at your emotional competencies and explores the concept of emotional intelligence. Strategic leadership looks at the level to which you think strategically and is very useful for individuals moving from possibly senior management to leadership positions where the emphasis shifts from operations to a strategic focus. Leadership style and climate looks at different leadership styles that you may use in different circumstances and how that impacts on the climate of the organisation and the behaviour and perception of staff. The 360 surveys generally contain some open-ended qualitative questions which are shown at the end of the report. Generic questions are, what can I or what would I like this person to stop, start or carry on doing? This provides context for scores and often allows the feedback to end on a positive note, as there is generally recognition of what is appreciated about the 360 target, the person in question who you are feeding back to. Customizable options allow different questions to be asked. Responses are anonymized and appear exactly as written. Okay, in summary, some key points and tips for feeding back your 360 survey reports. It's vital that you study the report in advance of a feedback session. Develop your own theories to explore with the client. Decide on whether to use raw score or STEN score options. So remember, the raw scores are a direct conversion of the survey scores onto a scale of 1 to 10. STEN scores are normed against comparison groups, with the average shown at 5.5 on the 10-point scale. If in doubt, always go with the raw scores. So first of all, explain the background model which the report relates to and how to interpret the scores shown. Look at the response rates from the different assessors and explore their significance. If someone is missing or if a particular group is underrepresented, what might that mean? Explore the personal qualities and look at how they may influence the behaviours shown. Look at the overall competency profile and the particular skill areas. Remember, these are just others scores at this point in time. Look at any particular linkages or where they may be high or low scores, and again, what does this mean about the overall profile shown? When you've decided on the key areas to focus on, explore these in some detail, looking at the relationships between the different assessors' scores and how these compare to the self-score. Is the self-score very high or very low? What's this saying about their own self-perception and their own self-esteem? And how does this compare to how others see them? Obviously, of particular significance is going to be the boss's perception. How is this different from report's perception? Does this individual behave differently according to different people? If so, what does this say about their approach to their workplace? Look at the item level tables at the end of the report in terms of particular strengths and weaknesses or hidden strengths or blind spots. If a derived score has been used, discuss this in the context of the report so far and in the context of the workplace behaviours and the particular development needs of this individual. If the interpersonal style derived score is used, what does this say about how this individual comes across? And how could they change their interpersonal behaviours to be more collaborative or more effective in the workplace? At the end of the report will be some open-ended question responses. Pull out some of these that relate to the discussion so far or may confirm the theory that you're exploring in terms of their behaviours. Try and resist the temptation on behalf of the client to identify specific individuals. Note also that this may be challenging and there's a temptation to overreact possibly to some comments. If possible, try and end on the positive comments about what this individual is doing at the moment and how this may be landing well in the workplace. Regardless of this, agree some actions regarding any behaviour change suggested. What is the overall report outcome suggesting? Where is this going? So remember, it's important to relate outcomes to some kind of clear developmental process or program, for example, a personal development plan, and possibly agree how this is going to be followed up. If this is part of a coaching session, this material is likely to input into more than one session. It's unlikely that in a session you're going to do any more than feedback a report, so decisions need to be made about how to relate this to the coaching process. More information is available on different products and coaching tools by looking at the product website, Psychologica website product pages, and also the PDF downloads on interpreting and feeding back 360 analysis reports. Gives more information on managing those derived scores and how to feed them back. So looking at the website, you'll find materials to support coaching and development in the blue zone in terms of helping to set vision and strategy using a technique called Achieving Aspirations. The yellow zone, there's support and materials to help in developing emotional intelligence, specifically looking at interactions between people. In the red zone, we've got support and materials looking at helping to embed change using spirals and positive and negative perceptions. So please check out these various tools and resources and check out the other videos available on setting up and managing the 360 process. Please check the Psychologica website and see how the model can be used as a basis for a whole range of tools and products for carrying out individual and organisational surveys and for materials to support coaching and development.